All right, welcome to Unseen Destinations. We're diving deep today into a topic that I think you'll find really intriguing.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Russian women in relationships.
Interesting.
We're going way beyond those typical stereotypes you might hear.
Right.
And getting into what it's really like to date someone from Russia. And joining us on this cultural expedition is our resident expert, ready to unpack all the fascinating details.
Yeah. It's definitely a cultural landscape full of surprises. What we'll find is that while traditions play a big role, individual personalities are ultimately what shapes these relationships.
Exactly. So our source material paints a picture of Russian women having certain expectations for their partners, especially when it comes to traditional roles. It seems like chivalry is not just alive and well, it's practically a requirement.
That's right. It's not just about opening doors or bringing flowers, though those gestures are certainly appreciated. It's about a deeper expectation for men to embody this protector role.
Okay, so I'm picturing a knight in shining armor here.
Yeah.
But what does that actually look like in everyday life?
Well, imagine this. Even on a packed bus, a Russian man is expected to give up his seat for a woman.
Wow.
It's considered basic courtesy. And when it comes to things like finances or making big decisions, the man often takes the lead.
That's interesting because here in the West, the trend is definitely moving towards a more 50-50 approach in relationships.
Yeah.
Are those traditional gender roles starting to shift in Russia at all?
They are, but it's a fascinating push and pull between generations. Younger Russians are definitely embracing more equal partnerships, influenced by global trends and economic realities. But for older generations, those traditional views still hold strong.
So navigating that generational divide could be tricky for couples.
Yeah.
And speaking of potential relationship hurdles, our source also highlighted the role of jealousy. Now, we all experience jealousy sometimes, but is there something specific to Russian culture that might amplify it?
I think it ties back to that strong emphasis on family and loyalty in Russian culture.
Okay.
Family is everything. So any perceived threat to that bond, whether it's a harmless flirtation or even liking someone else's photo on social media, can trigger intense feelings of jealousy.
Wow. So even an innocent Instagram
Yeah.
could be a potential minefield. You really have to be mindful of those cultural nuances, huh?
Absolutely. What might seem casual in one culture can be a big deal in another.
Right.
For example, that casual kiss hello, that's common in some places.
Yeah.
It's definitely not a good idea with a Russian partner. That kind of physical affection is generally reserved for close relationships in their culture.
That's a great point. It's so easy to misinterpret things when you're navigating different cultural norms.
Yeah.
Okay, so before we move on, I want to touch on those red flags our source mentioned. Apparently, excessive drinking and a lack of financial stability are major deal breakers for many Russian women.
That's true, and it goes back to the historical and societal context in Russia. Alcoholism has been a persistent issue, which understandably makes it a serious concern in relationships. And financial stability. Well, in a society that's experienced economic ups and downs, it's understandably valued highly.
So these are definitely sensitive areas to be aware of. But it's important to remember we're talking about generalizations here, right? Not every Russian woman will have those same expectations or concerns.
Exactly. Just like anywhere else in the world, you'll find a wide range of personalities and preferences. It's crucial to approach every individual as just that, an individual, and not a stereotype of their culture.
All right, well, now that we've explored some of the potential challenges, I want to hear about the positives. Our source mentions some qualities often associated with Russian women.
Yeah.
Beauty, healthy lifestyles, incredible cooking skills.
Right. There's definitely a cultural emphasis in Russia on presenting your best self, especially for women.
Okay.
So it's not unusual to see women dressed impeccably even for everyday errands.
Wow.
This attention to appearance isn't just about vanity, it's a reflection of self-respect and social grace.
And those cooking skills, I've heard stories, it's like a cultural rite of passage for Russian women to learn how to cook from a young age.
Absolutely. Food plays a central role in Russian culture.
Right.
Homemade meals are a way of showing love and care. Those culinary skills are often passed down through generations, and family recipes are treasured.
So you're telling me I could find a partner who's beautiful, health conscious, and can whip up a delicious meal?
Well, I wouldn't say it's quite as simple as checking off boxes.
Right.
Yes, these qualities certainly contribute to the appeal of Russian women.
Fair enough. And let's not forget about intelligence.
Right.
Our source mentioned that Russian women are known for their sharp minds and engaging conversation.
Absolutely. Education is highly valued in Russia, and women are encouraged to pursue their intellectual passions.
Right.
You'll often find they're well-read, curious about the world, and able to hold their own in any conversation.
This is sounding more and more appealing. But I know it's not all sunshine and roses.
Yep.
What are some other realities or misconceptions that we should address when it comes to dating someone from a different culture?
I think one of the biggest misconceptions is that you can fully understand another culture just by reading about it. While research is helpful, real understanding comes from personal interaction, open communication, and a willingness to embrace the unknown.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
So with that in mind, let's dive even deeper into some of the complexities and joys of dating Russian women after a short break.
Sounds good.
Stick with us, folks.
We'll be right back.
Before the break, we were talking about those amazing cooking skills.
Right.
And how food is such a big part of Russian culture. I'm curious, are there any specific dishes or culinary traditions that are especially important when it comes to dating or relationships?
Oh, absolutely. There are a few that really stand out.
Okay.
For example, pelmeni.
Pelmeni.
Yeah, which are these delicious little dumplings filled with meat or cheese, are often considered a comfort food and a symbol of family and togetherness. Sharing a big pot of pelmeni is a really heartwarming experience.
Okay, that sounds amazing.
Yeah.
I'm getting hungry just thinking about it.
It is good.
But I imagine there's more to it than just the food itself, right? There must be some cultural significance to the act of cooking and sharing a meal together.
You're exactly right.
Yeah.
In Russian culture, cooking for someone is a way of showing you care.
Okay.
It's a gesture of love and hospitality.
Right.
And it's not just about the woman cooking for the man either.
Oh.
It's common for couples to cook together, sharing the responsibility and enjoying the process as a team.
I love that.
Yeah.
It sounds like a really beautiful way to connect and build intimacy.
It is.
And speaking of intimacy, our source mentioned that Russian women often seek serious relationships that could lead to marriage. Is that still the norm, or are things changing in that regard?
Well, it's definitely true that marriage and family are highly valued in Russian culture.
Okay.
Traditionally, there's been this expectation that dating is a path towards marriage, not just casual fun. But as with everything else, things are evolving.
Yeah.
Younger generations are more open to different relationship models, and the idea of living together before marriage, or even choosing not to marry at all, is becoming more acceptable.
So it's kind of like a cultural crossroads with traditional values intersecting with modern ideas about love and relationships.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that can create some interesting dynamics in the dating scene.
Now, one thing I've always wondered about is the financial aspect of dating in Russia.
Okay.
Our source mentioned that traditionally the man is expected to be the provider.
Yeah.
Is that still the case today?
It's a bit of a mixed bag, honestly.
Okay.
While that traditional model is still prevalent in some circles, particularly among older generations,
Yeah.
younger couples are increasingly embracing a more egalitarian approach.
Right.
Sharing expenses or splitting the bill on dates is becoming more common, especially in larger cities where Western influences are stronger.
So it sounds like communication is key, especially when it comes to finances.
Absolutely. Having those open and honest conversations about money early on can prevent a lot of misunderstandings down the road.
All right, well, we've talked about some of the challenges and evolving norms, but
Yeah.
I want to get back to those amazing qualities that Russian women are known for.
Yeah.
We've already touched on beauty, health consciousness, and culinary skills.
Yeah.
But there's one more that I think is incredibly important: intelligence.
Mm.
Our source really emphasized that Russian women are known for their sharp minds and engaging conversations.
Right.
What's your take on that?
Well, I wholeheartedly agree.
Go.
Education is highly prized in Russia, and women are just as encouraged as men to pursue academic excellence.
Right.
So you'll often find Russian women are well-read, curious about the world, and able to hold their own in any intellectual discussion.
That sounds incredibly stimulating. But beyond just book smarts, is there a certain wisdom or perspective that comes from growing up in Russia that you've observed?
I think one of the most striking things is their resilience.
Oh.
Russia has a complex and often challenging history. Right.
And that shaped the national character in profound ways.
Mm-hmm.
Russian women in particular have this incredible strength and determination that I find really admirable.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
sounds like they bring a lot of depth and substance to relationships.
Absolutely. And I think that's part of what makes dating a Russian woman such a rich and rewarding experience.
Mhm.
You're not just connecting with someone on a superficial level.
Right.
Connecting with someone who has a unique story, a rich cultural heritage, and a strong sense of self.
I love that perspective.
Yeah.
It really highlights the importance of going beyond those stereotypes and appreciating the individual.
Right.
Now, while we're on the topic of cultural differences, I think it's important to acknowledge that there can be challenges and potential misunderstandings when you're dating someone from another country.
Yeah.
Have you encountered any common pitfalls or advice you'd offer to navigate those cultural waters?
Well, one of the biggest mistakes people make is assuming that their way of doing things is the right way.
Yeah. It's so important to approach the relationship with an open mind and a willingness to learn about your partner's culture and values.
So it's about embracing those differences rather
Mhm.
than seeing them as obstacles.
Exactly. And communication is absolutely crucial.
Right.
Don't be afraid to ask questions, even if they seem silly. It's
Sure.
better to clarify something you don't understand than to make assumptions that could lead to conflict.
That's great advice.
Yeah.
And I imagine a sense of humor goes a long way, too.
Oh, absolutely. Being able to laugh together, especially when things get lost in translation, can really strengthen your bond.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground today, from traditional expectations to evolving norms, potential challenges, and those incredible qualities that make dating a Russian woman such a unique experience.
It's been a lot.
But before we wrap up, I'm curious, is there anything else you think our listeners should keep in mind as they embark on their own journeys into the world of cross-cultural dating?
I think one of the most important things to remember is that while cultural insights can be incredibly helpful, they're just a starting point.
Mm-hmm.
Every individual is unique. And the most beautiful thing about relationships is getting to know someone for who they truly are beyond any cultural labels or stereotypes.
That's such a powerful message. We're back for the final stretch of our deep dive into the world of dating Russian women. You know, we've covered so much ground today, from those deep-rooted traditions to modern dating trends. I feel like I've gained a whole new perspective.
It's been quite a journey, hasn't it? We've talked about the challenges, the joys, the importance of communication, and above all, the power of embracing individual differences.
Absolutely. And I think it's safe to say that dating a Russian woman is anything but predictable.
That's for sure. You never quite know what to expect, which is part of the excitement. But beyond those surface-level surprises, what really stands out to me is the depth of character and resilience you often find in Russian women.
I was thinking about that earlier when you were talking about their history and how it shapes them. It seems like that resilience translates into their approach to relationships as well.
That's a great observation, yeah. They tend to be incredibly loyal and devoted partners. They value commitment and aren't afraid to put in the work to build a strong, lasting relationship.
That's definitely appealing, especially in a world where relationships can often feel fleeting.
Right. There's something very grounding about that kind of commitment. And I think it ties back to that strong sense of family and tradition that's so ingrained in Russian culture.
You've given us so many incredible insights today. But before we wrap up, I want to bring it back to our listener. What's the one piece of advice, that golden nugget of wisdom you'd offer someone who's considering dating a Russian woman, or perhaps even someone from another culture?
That's a tough one. But I think the most important thing is to go into it with an open heart and a willingness to learn. Don't let stereotypes or preconceived notions cloud your judgment. Embrace the unknown. Be curious. And remember that the most rewarding relationships are those built on mutual respect, understanding, and genuine connection.
Beautifully said. And on that note, I think it's time to bring our deep dive to a close. We've explored the intricacies of Russian dating culture, debunked some myths, and hopefully sparked some curiosity along the way.
It's been a pleasure sharing these insights with you and our listeners. I hope this conversation has inspired everyone to approach cross-cultural relationships with a sense of adventure and an appreciation for the richness that diversity brings to our lives.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Thanks for joining us on Unseen Destinations. We'll be back next time with another fascinating deep dive into a new and exciting corner of the world. Until then, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep those hearts open.